This is a fun article from NPR, and NPR dropped this one. It's Thanksgiving week. You're going to be with family. You might be with friends or even a loved one like this couple who I don't know if they're going to be together much longer. We'll have to read this article. But apparently she started to believe some conspiracy theories. Oh, no. And you know what that means? She probably needed a team of clinicians to make sure that she doesn't read Republican news stories anymore. So NPR wrote about this, pretty hilarious. What happens when your partner has an overnight political conversion? Let's see how this unfolded. But they write, over the last years, we've been trying to bring peace to America, says NPR, by being one of the most politicized organizations in America on behalf of Democrats. But here's the story. Late one night, June 2020, Katrina Vaillancourt, almost like villain, lay awake in her bedroom, overwhelmed by the stress of the vid. Unable to sleep, she pressed play on an online video series that a friend had sent to her. Oh no. The video's narrator, what is she watching? Promised to reveal evidence of an elite plan so evil, so all-encompassing, that people will be shocked to the core. It was a dizzying 10-part video series called The Fall of Cabal. It promoted QAnon conspiracy theories and said that our society is controlled by satanic freak shows who do bad things to kids, which I think is pretty accurate. There's 300,000 missing kids here, 400,000 by some estimates, courtesy of Biden-Harris. Where did those kids go? Vaillancourt would later think back on this moment as the point at which her beliefs radically changed, rupturing her closest relationships, including the one with her then fiance, Stephen Giglieri. The other guy. Giglieri said was asleep beside her, but she watched just that video one night, and by the next morning, after watching one video series, he would have trouble recognizing her. Devastating. A mutual friend introduced them when they were in their midlife, correctly predicting they'd hit it off. He's white-collar Catholic. She calls herself a New Age hippie. He's silver-haired C-suite executive. She's nonviolent communications coach, and they live in the San Francisco Bay Area together. Early in their relationship, during the 2016 primary, they volunteered for Vaillancourt's political hero at the time, Bernie Sanders. She's a natural health enthusiast, influenced his diet and supplement. He tried to persuade her on the benefits of modern medicine, but then the vid hit, okay? And this caused there's a lot of vid divorces out there. Business divorces, friendship divorces, familial divorces, actual divorces. They disagreed on the government's response and about the jabs. And things grew tense in 2020 as they were stuck at home together. But then she watched the movie. Fall of Cabal argues, sounds like a great flick. I think I've watched maybe the first episode of that, but it is extremely long. Argues that the world is not what it seems and that the media has suppressed the truth. It's all true. It promotes the baseless claim, that an elite group, including well-known Democrats and Hollywood figures, does bad things to children, which is strange because we know that there's a lot of evidence of this. You've got, the Diddy escapades, which are happening right now, where there's at least allegations of that are floating around, underage, floating around, not actually charged in the indictment. We also had Epstein, which he got a sweetheart smoking plea deal for solicitation, right? And then they let him roam free forever until then they had attacked that, and now he's allegedly dead. So that was enabled by the government forever. Others have come and been excused. Okay, nobody on the Epstein list, for example, has been prosecuted for their misdeeds, even though Ghislaine Maxwell is in custody for that. So it does feel like there's a lot of that happening. And then when we have 400,000 kids go missing at the border, our elected officials aren't all that interested in it. Nobody really talks about that all that much. Why is that? So I felt nauseated. The narrator called the president a genius and saying when she was relieved when the final episode claimed a group of government insiders was working on a plan to take down the cabal with Trump's help. The narrator called the president a genius, a 5D chess player, a man with a huge heart, saying a golden age is on the way. It is. I felt nauseated by the sight or sound of Trump prior to this night, said Vaillancourt. But at the time, when the world felt chaotic, My fear dissolved. I felt this beaming of love, like a curtain had been thrown wide open. That is the power of the truth. Isn't that amazing? Yeah, you probably felt that in your life. I know I have. She stayed up that night trying to fact check. Oh my gosh. It's a paradigm shift. In fact, Stephen Covey talks about it in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And I remember reading that as a young man and understanding the concept of a paradigm shift. And if you haven't read that book, or at least seen the example of the drawing of the woman, it's a fun example because it shows you a paradigm shift. And we're like, oh my gosh, like you'd see everything completely different. One image of a woman and many different things, and it just clicks in your brain. And so I understand what she's experiencing. Giglieri had been asleep, the guy next to her, all night, woke up to find her still on her computer. She's like looking at it, like, what the hell's going on? Like, we're under attack by demonic forces. Says he was unsettled by her energy. She seemed unfamiliar and frenetic. Now, as the day progressed, she was still not ready to explain to him the conversion that she had just gone through. But after 4 years together at that point, he could tell something was off. He says, I don't recognize who you are right now, baby. He recalled. He shocked her when he asked her, you wouldn't hurt me in my sleep, would you? Look, man, if you have to ask your significant other that question, I think you're probably past the point. You're not going to stab me when I'm dreaming, are you? What if she says no? If you have to ask, are you feeling No, of course not. No, of course not. I'm not going to stab you. No. Sweet dreams, though. Villancourt's social media feeds kept showing her more and more QAnon content, including posts and videos claiming the alleged cabal had planned the pandemic to institute authoritarian control. Okay, they sure did it. Don't know if they planned it, but they certainly instituted authoritarian control. They locked us down. They mandated things, and they covered up all the evidence. And whether it was a planned release or it was a mistake, there's evidence that it was orchestrated and created by man in a lab. So once you fell into this rabbit hole, that became the entire online ecosystem. Says, my Facebook, my YouTube, my Google searches, everything was giving me more and more of this information. I found it so fascinating. I believe myself to be waking up. Now, much of the content appealed to her interest in wellness and alternative health because our food and our health industries in many ways are not keeping us healthy. While some QAnon adherents have promoted hate, anti-Semitism, and violence, she did not see content like that because it's not a lot of that. I think that there are pockets in the internet where maybe some hateful people or some anti-Semitic people also believe those things, but those ideas that our government is tyrannical and dictatorial and is violating our humanity and our human rights, that is an independent thought in and of itself that can be explored without being labeled anti-Semitic or hateful or violent. Now, that first day after watching the series, she shared a post raising questions about Bill Gates and his intentions. Yeah, which were, in my opinion, to make money. That's why he was on the TV every day, like showing us with those like little blocks, like moving the blocks around on those stupid videos. I'm Bill Gates, moving things around. Okay, Bill, you have billions of dollars. He's going to make more money? That's what you're here for, to make more money off vaccines? Gates has been the frequent target for conspiracy theories. Yeah. Who wrote this? Bill Gates. On day one, I started, she says, to have people react to me, argue with me, accuse me of being racist, right? Because they're programmed that way. Homophobic, transphobic, crazy, delusional. I was like, where's this coming from? It's because you're challenging their worldview, their paradigm. They're not ready to leave the matrix. Her old friends began turning their backs on her at a time when she was already feeling isolated due to the jab, to the pandemic. Yeah, a lot of us went through this, fighting with people about this. But at the same time, she met new friends online, was invited to QAnon Facebook groups, better friends there. As the guy heard more about her new beliefs, it was hard for him to control his frustration. He said he slammed doors around the house. Slamming doors. He sounds violent. God, how can she believe this? Within a few days of watching the video series, Villancourt went to go stay with a friend. Good, get out of there. That guy sounds like he's a violent lunatic who's asking you if he's going to stab you in his sleep. You should be worried if he's going to stab you. So then he went to consult a therapist because he's so mentally unstable, who happened to have experience helping family members inside cults. Yeah. Remember the cult of Fauci? Who was doing dances for Fauci? Who was putting him on the cover of Time magazine and saying, trust the science, which doesn't align with the scientific method at all, which is to create a hypothesis, test the hypothesis, find what's wrong with it, then create a new thesis and then work through it again. That never happened. They just said, shut up. It works. And we know the truth now. Now, his therapist advised he should not expect to be able to change Villancourt's mind and should be prepared that she might never change her views. We'll see if she did. I don't know. Hopefully not. But you want to talk about cult-like behavior. Didn't Democrats in D.C. vote 93% for Kamala? D.C. That's a cult. That's cult behavior. There are certain demographics in this country, I believe it was black women who voted over 90% for Kamala. Over 90%. No other constituencies, right, break that way. What are you talking about cultish behavior? The Democrats, with their climate change ideology, is a cult. It's a religious operation. You have to believe in orthodoxy. So this guy goes to a therapist because he can't handle it. So then she leaves. Good for her. Giglieri decided to give the relationship 6 more months. While he hoped she'd snap out of it, he was open to the possibility they could still make things work. He watched the fall of Cabal and saw why it had affected her. He knew she'd been having a hard time in the months leading up to the moment. All of a sudden, here's this thing that lays out everything. Here's a problem. Here's a solution. And I can see how her sense of idealism and to some extent the naivete, what are you talking about? But I could also see how those were sparked by this. He's probably, shoot, that's pretty convincing. Maybe I'm wrong too. Giglieri understood he needed to make her feel safe. I could say some things that I knew he wouldn't agree with, and he was willing to say, I hear your viewpoint, I don't share it, but that's okay. Villancourt came home a couple of weeks later. Looking back, she said it was the key, that they rebuilt their connection first rather than debating the facts. At one point, Giglieri and the female, so they both, he asked her to consider how she would have reacted if he had become a Trump supporter overnight. She said, I probably would have kicked him out. Yeah, that's fine. Villancourt said it was a wake-up call to remember how difficult the situation was for him. You got to have aligned values. How can a relationship work if you're canceling each other's votes out and your values aren't aligned? I don't know. Some people make it work, but if you're as politically charged, let's say as I am, that's not a real feasible solution. And I know that some people, politics is not in it at all, right? I think some people don't even vote or care about politics. So for them, having political misalignments is probably not a big deal. This obviously in this relationship, it was. Says it's a belief. I'll respect your beliefs, but you can't tell me it's the truth. If we can't see it, touch it, smell it, whatever, it ain't the truth. It's a belief, says Giglieri, which is a dumb statement. What does that even mean? If we can't see it, touch it, smell it, whatever, it ain't the truth. It's a belief. Okay. Can you smell a math equation? I don't know. Villancourt credits her training in nonviolent communication for helping her and Giglieri avoid name calling. They've set times to discuss her new beliefs. So they block like they have meetings to talk about her conspiracies. He's like, okay, let's talk about your crazy thoughts now. As the fall progressed, she gradually backed away from QAnon. Unfortunately, I didn't come out nearly as quickly as I fell in. And so they pulled her out of it. She began to realize that some of the prophecies, like some of the QAnon prophecies, like the storm or the return of JFK and some of those other things, and says, yep, her father is Jewish, and he convinced her that it's anti-Semitic. All right. So she backed out of it. By the very end, just over 6 months, she decided she was done with QAnon. But she'd also grown disillusioned with the Democrats. Yeah. After feeling disappointed in how they ran their presidencies, as she searched for what she believed after leaving QAnon, she no longer identified with the left. And so that's a tremendous victory. All right. Yeah. And there is crazy stuff on the internet. Don't get me wrong. There were a bunch of people saying that Trump was the acting president and stuff like that. You're like, he's not really in the White House doing these things. So but yes, he was controlling this, controlling that. Okay. So I understand that. I think what we're talking about is opening up and escaping the standard mandated narratives that they just hand to you on a silver platter. And they say, this is what you have to believe now. And the fact that she's able to explore other thoughts and other concepts, even if she goes out one way, comes back, I think we've all done that. I was thinking about, as a younger man, like in college, I was a political science major. And I'm like, man, which of these ideologies am I? Which one am I? Am I a libertarian? Am I a Republican? Am I a liberal? What am I? That's how they control you, is by labeling you, putting you into buckets so that you don't think critically. You just default, you outsource your thinking to whatever that ideology is. You just, well, what do they think about this? What's the libertarian position, right? Libertarianism is very attractive. I'm like, hey, I do hate the government. And so how about that? It seems like it's consistent, but then you start to talk about values and some of the downsides of unbridled capitalism and free market economics and certain things like that. When you have a global infrastructure, it doesn't seem like it's going to work out that well. in certain domains. So you're trying to figure this out, and that's what she's doing, and I'm perfectly happy with that. That's part of the journeys. What do we believe? Iron sharpens iron as we journey to truth. So now, after a year, after she turned away, they got married. Oh, good for them. Their partnership had already been through the fire, but that's great. She's going to convert his butt. Watch this. She and Giglieri are still building their path. Says he's struggling with the idea. He's struggling with the idea that his fellow Americans reelected Trump, and he feels resigned to the next 4 years being very ugly. Now, it's going to be great, brother. It's going to be amazing. You just got married. She's going to show you the way to truth. She voted for RFK Jr., even though he dropped out of the race. Trump picked him, and I have been of the opinion that's different than Stevens. These conversations are still raw. Right? He's going to realize, man, he's going to wake up. Things are still better for under President Trump. That's going to come soon enough. So they're trying to figure out what they're doing over there.